when international law has been stripped and disregarded, human rights have been stripped and disregarded. We could talk about that in regard to Gaza, war crimes, what I consider genocide, but we can debate that, right? But same is true with executors. We just had the Prince of Saudi Arabia treated like a king.
Dr. Cornel West was a guest on Abby Phillip's CNN show to go up against a panel that included a couple of MAGA stooges in Batia Ungar-Sargon and Lydia Moynihan. The topic of discussion on this particular Abby Phillip debate was this latest strike on a fishing boat and the legality and the morality of that. We're going to take a look at clips from this Abby Phillip panel on her CNN show with Cornel West and the rest. I want to share some thoughts on this too. Let's get into it together.
War crimes and whether Pete Hegseth committed one. The Pentagon strikes on alleged boats in the Caribbean. They are raising serious alarms from both sides of the aisle tonight. Despite a debate about whether the administration has the authority to even strike the boats, 22 of them have been sunk. More than 80 people killed in those strikes. And now the reports seem to indicate that one of those strikes left no survivors, and a follow-up strike or a double tap was ordered to kill everyone on board that craft. Both Republicans and Democrats are arguing that at best, a second strike is illegal, and at worst, it's a war crime.
If it was as if the article said, that is a violation of the law of war. When people want to surrender, you don't kill them.
If that reporting is true, it's a clear violation of the DOD's own laws of war, as well as international law. So this rises to the level of a war crime.
Obviously, if that occurred, that would be very serious, and I agree that would be an illegal act.
If the facts are as have been alleged, that there was a second strike specifically to kill the survivors in the war in the water, that's a stone cold war crime. It's also murder.
The White House and the Pentagon have denied a Washington Post report that claimed that Hegseth gave an order to, quote, kill everybody. And tonight, Hegseth and the White House are shifting responsibility to Admiral Mitch Bradley. He's the commander of U.S. Special Operations. Now, Hegseth says that he stands by that admiral's combat decisions, while the White House calls them lawful. Joining us in our fifth seat tonight is Margaret Donovan. She is a former Army JAG. Margaret, I want to start with you because there is this dispute about who gave the order. First of all, what do you make of the fact that tonight they seem to be pointing the finger pretty directly at this admiral and naming him, both at the White House podium and Pete Hegseth in this tweet in his defense, but really saying that he's responsible for this?
Yeah, I think that is a great indication of an administration who knows that something has gone terribly wrong here. I think that people are finally recognizing, and that's why you see we did that intro with all of these different leaders and lawmakers saying that this is a stone cold war crime. This is so basic to everybody who has served in the military and who has trained on the law of war and the law of armed conflict, that it is a war crime, that it's no surprise that the administration will be trying to shift the blame. I think that the choice to sort of pin this on Admiral Bradley is an interesting one, but not unexpected, because Secretary Hegseth is not somebody who has exactly leadership qualities, right? He's actually largely unqualified to be in that position. And so, of course, his natural instinct would likely be to say, something's gone wrong, let me find somebody to blame this on. Now, that's not to absolve Admiral Bradley of anything. If the facts really have played out the way that it is being reported, he absolutely had a duty not to follow an unlawful order if it was Secretary Hegseth's order.
Yeah, I mean, Batia, this kind of puts the whole unlawful order thing in a different context, because now there's a real question about whether there was an unlawful order and who gave it.
Well, first of all, the story has been massively misreported. So you have actual headlines saying that Hegseth gave the order for the second hit. That wasn't in the initial Washington Post article, which claimed that following, by hearsay, somebody claimed to have heard Hegseth say, we have to kill everybody, therefore the admiral gave the second hit. So I just want to clear that up. I think that's why Hegseth wrote the tweet, is to just correct the record. But what I don't understand is, it is the Secretary of State's right to determine who is a terrorist and who isn't. The Secretary of State answers to the executive branch. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has determined that these boats are carrying terrorists, which makes the attacks on them legal. And the only question is whether that boat was disabled or whether it was destroyed. if it was destroyed, how are there still live people clinging to it? And if it was only disabled, let me just finish the point, then it was still a threat, meaning it was still a legitimate target. So I'm very confused. And by the way, I've spoken to a lot of veterans today who are also very confused by all of this bipartisan outrage.
Well,
get
the
it.
good thing we have a military lawyer
Can I just
at the
respond
table.
to two
so,
things?
yeah,
First, I would say to your point about, who gave this order, what the Washington Post article said. I think that's precisely why we need the Senate and the House to do what they're supposed to do.
I
Have
totally
oversight,
agree, by
have
the way.
investigations.
I totally agree.
Let's figure it out.
I want more information as well.
And second, on the point of the Secretary of State making it something a designated terrorist organization, that actually does not enable you to lethally target somebody. Naming somebody on the Secretary of State's list of foreign terrorist organizations actually only does, serious things. You can sanction people who are members of DTOs or FTOs. You can ban them from immigrating to the United States. You can actually criminally prosecute people who give them support, material support to terrorism. But it does not enable you to lethally target them. Yes, many DTOs and FTOs end up being organizations that we target abroad, but that's subject to congressional authorization and the laws of armed conflict when we see them abroad.
So you are in a dispute with the administration about that, which is totally fine.
Precisely.
Yes. Okay. So
Yes.
yes. So, but I am not. I think that they have that authority. So they have not been challenged yet in any significant way, neither by Congress nor by the court. And so obviously, you're siding with them.
I'll let you get in, but I don't want us to lose the point here. The question is actually not whether or not this was a legitimate target. I think there's dispute about that, but that's not what we're disputing. The question is whether it is legal, according to our rules of engagement and the laws of armed conflict that we abide by, to strike a target a second time when the target doesn't appear to pose a threat or is surrendering. That is the part that I think is in dispute. And that's not a question of whether they were terrorists or not. Even if they were terrorists, that might very well be illegal.
What's nuts to me about this is, and I agree with what Abby Phillip is saying here, that this particular argument in this debate on Abby Phillip's show is about the double tap, the striking the ship the second time. But it's incredible to me that we have so lost our moral framing as a country, the United States, that the question should be, why is the United States doing this to begin with? What moral authority is there to do this, to attack these ships that are no threat to us? They're not invading our country. They're not coming here and attacking American citizens. They're not attacking American citizens out on the sea. And this notion from the Trump administration and from this clown Pete Hegseth and from Marco Rubio that the United States can just attack anyone, anywhere in the world at any time just because this administration says, well, they're bad guys. We've never given any evidence. We don't know who is on these boats. They just say they're quote unquote narco terrorists, this new buzzword from the Trump administration. But we as American people have no idea who they are. And of course, all of the MAGA types, Batia Ungar-Sargon, and we're going to hear from Lydia Moynihan, the other MAGA stooge here in a minute, they just gobble all this up and take it as fact that these are narco terrorists who are this huge threat to the United States without any evidence at all, just because Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth and Marco Rubio and these other scumbags say that they are narco terrorists and a threat to the United States. That's the moral question here. Can a country just attack people anywhere in the world who haven't attacked them? And of course, the United States has been doing this for a long, long time. But I don't think most people, right or left, just regular citizens, except for the most hardcore MAGA cultists, are accepting this. The pundits, Batia Ungar-Sargon, Lydia Moynihan, Scott Jennings, Ben Ferguson, all of these creeps who are on Abby Phillip's show all the time, of course, they're going to parrot the propaganda. But I don't think the public is buying this.
I think we should take a step back, because the only reason we know about this is because obviously somebody involved in that operation was uncomfortable with what was happening.
Yeah.
And that's how the Washington Post found out about it. Somebody leaked this to a reporter. People are not happy with Hegseth's leadership at the department. People are not happy with some of the things that the military is being ordered to do, whether it's the SEAL team, whether it's ENCOM, whether it's... and I think that we have to pay attention to the fact that this isn't coming from some random reporter who was on the boat with them. This is coming from an internal source who is unhappy with the leadership of the administration.
To that point, the Washington Post had a story tonight that this is a quote from a military official. This is protect Pete bullshit, that source said. One official said of Levitt's statement, it's throwing us, the service members, under the bus.
Right. I think it's going to be hard for this guy to
there is
keep his
clearly
job.
not just whatever happened in that strike, but the cleanup from the White House is causing a lot of consternation.
Yeah, well, one thing I would note is every lawmaker you played started their thought by saying, if this is true. And the fact of the matter is there is a lot in dispute tonight. We don't know the answers to everything. And Batya raised an important point that there is a difference between disabling a boat and destroying it. If it was only disabled under the laws of war, actually, they would have potentially been able to make that a mission, a military target. But I think a couple important points to make here more generally is, it's interesting to hear the media talking about this breathlessly for hours and hours when, Biden or Obama drone striked. The only thing that needed to happen was John Kirby would go.
Here we go. This is what we get from every one of these MAGA people who goes on Abby Phillip's show. Well, what about Biden? What about Obama? It's never, hey, your guy is in office right now. We are talking about him. This isn't what about Biden and what about Obama. And people on the left were against those drone strikes also. So quit the moral equivalency bullshit.
Go on TV and say, oh, we made a mistake. We're learning from it. And nobody batted an eye. And yet now this has become the biggest.
True.
This has become the biggest story, though.
It's actually not true that no one batted an eye at Obama's highly controversial drone strikes. That's the first thing.
No, and in fact, in the al-Awlaki strike, which was probably one of his most controversial, the legal opinion supporting that strike was fully disclosed at some point. And I think that's what needs to happen here. We need to see the legal opinions.
But I think the bigger story, though, is the average Trump voter looks at this and they think, why is the media breathlessly covering narco-terrorists and drug traffickers when the average American looks at this and thinks, oh, Donald Trump is actually
what I would say to the average
border.
Trump voter is that, we have rules of engagement in the world that are not there to protect narco-terrorists. They're there to protect American soldiers in combat. And so it's super important for people who, I'm sure a lot of Trump supporters who have loved ones who are going out in armed conflicts to know that when they are engaged by an enemy, that enemy, if they are not adhering to rules of war, are held responsible for those violations. And that, if they are adhering to rules of war, if they are struck in an attack and then they've survived, there are rules about what happens to them. They don't get just assassinated on the battlefield if they weren't taken out in the initial strike. So that's why it matters. It matters to Trump voters. It matters to Biden voters. It also matters to the United States' credibility in the world, because this isn't just, look, we don't even know who these people were. We don't know what drugs they were carrying. It's not about that. It's about whether or not we operate by any rules at all.
Absolutely. And I think that's the real challenge here, because it's an irony, if not hypocrisy, to see both White House and Congress of both parties all of a sudden full of this moral energy when international law has been stripped and disregarded. Human rights have been stripped and disregarded. We could talk about that in regard to Gaza, war crimes, what I consider genocide, but we can debate that, right? But same is true with executors. We just had the Prince of Saudi Arabia treated like a king. You got crimes against humanity taking place every day. Same is true in the history of the United States vis-a-vis Latin America. The Monroe Doctrine of 1823, we have intervened in 31 of the 33 countries down there. So you can imagine what they think of us. Military coups against democratic regimes, Guatemala, Goulart, Brazil, we can go on and on and on. So it's an irony to see all of a sudden both of these parties saying, we've got this moral authority concerned about what is a war crime and what isn't. Okay, let's debate that. Well, but the larger context is the war crimes have been shot through the history of the country.
Give Margaret a quick moment to respond,
I hear you.
and we'll continue.
I will say I think it's encouraging that there is outrage over this. I think because there was the waters were intentionally muddied in terms of the legal authority for striking in the first place. And so the fact that we see something so brazen, firing on shipwrecked survivors of an initial strike, and that is agreed across the board to be illegal, I think it's encouraging that we can at least have bipartisan support for that.
In the name of morality, not partisanship.
Sure,
As soon
absolutely.
as it's partisanship, you
Absolutely.
lose any
But I
more
think that what's
content.
happening and why the rules of engagement, as Abby was just saying, are so important to the American military, that we can show that we uphold them, is because we need allies. We need allies. If we are going to war, even if we're going to war with Venezuela, we can't go in there alone. We need people who are going to come in with us, and they understand that the United States will follow the rules of engagement. We've already seen in the Caribbean that the United Kingdom and the Dutch have stopped sharing intelligence with us. And so we rarely go into conflicts by ourselves. We need allies, and our allies want to look to us and understand that we will follow the rules of engagement if they fight alongside us.
We're going to hit pause on this and
So we've got Lydia Moynihan talking about what the average Trump voter believes. The average Trump voter is a moron who doesn't understand rules of engagement or care about rules of engagement. It just, my daddy says that this is a bad guy, so they should be bombed. So throw that out the window. Cornel West is absolutely spot on about the morality of this entire issue. The United States has been committing war crimes for a long, long time. But now we're having this hair splitting over, well, is it the first tap or is it the second tap? You know, did they kill all of them with the first bombing? Oh, did they go back and kill? I don't think any of that matters. Yes, from a legal standpoint and from international law standpoint, it does matter. But the truth of the matter with this is this shouldn't be happening to begin with. And Abby Phillip and all of these other media people should be grilling the members of Congress, the Republicans, and the spokespeople for the Republican Party, and any Democrats who supported this as well, and saying, hey, you voted to confirm this clown, Pete Hegseth. Everybody knew he was a clown. And now the clown is doing clownish things. And maybe Pete Hegseth, hopefully, will be thrown under the bus. But the larger question is the decision-making ability of Donald Trump to have this guy as his Secretary of Defense, and the decisions of the Republican Party who voted to confirm this idiot, this bloodthirsty idiot who brags about this stuff. But now he's facing some heat, and of course he's going to do what his boss, Donald Trump, does and blame somebody else. So to me, those are the real question here is not splitting hairs over exactly what's a war crime and what isn't a war crime. The real question, and I think Cornel West is someone who is saying this as part of this panel on Abby Phillip's show, this shouldn't be happening to begin with. This has been going on for a long, long time with the United States. And we need to be asking broader questions as to the morality of attacking people that haven't attacked us. And, you know, we're talking here, you know, they're bringing up, well, the possibility of war with Venezuela. Over what? Venezuela has not attacked the United States. These boats are thousands of miles away from our country. They pose no threat to our citizens. Those should be the questions that are asked right now. But instead, they're going to get lost in the weeds, the media and the politicians, over this one instance. And maybe somebody will be on the chopping block over this. But then they can just go back to more bombings and say, hey, we didn't do a double tap. We just bombed them once. So that's okay. And I don't think all but the true MAGA morons and the pundits who go on Abby Phillip show night after night are actually buying this. Let me know what you think about all this. Do you agree with what Cornel West and Abby Phillip are saying on Abby Phillip's show? Or are you on the side of these MAGA stooges like Batia Ungar-Sargon and Lydia Moynihan, and I'm sure Scott Jennings whenever he's on there next? Let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. I am Chris on Culture, and I'll see you in the next video.